Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Zach Ingo Finch, who was waiting for his co-host, Gregory Elliott, to say or do anything to start this podcast. But what actually happened was he stared for a couple of seconds, which you won't see because it will be taken out in post, before eventually phasing back into the room when I started saying words. How you doing, Greg? You all right, mate?
Yeah, right, mate. It's because you were so confidently talking about the topic of the show before we hit the record button that I was just going with that flow. I just thought that was it. You were taking the lead.
And you're right. What actually happened there is, after having a bit of a preamble, neither of us discussed who was hosting today, and I guess this has now fallen to me. So I'm enjoying you today, listeners, off the back of a failed driving test. So I apologise if I sound manic. It's because I am. It wasn't catastrophic. It was annoyingly frustrating. And if any of you have had to take a driving test or know anything about it recently, the waiting list to redo them is a thing that I could do a whole podcast on all by itself. But that isn't why you're here. You are here for us to talk about Southampton. So today we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about the Premier League. And we're going to talk about the fact that
not Southampton as a good season, right? So
I would like to bring up a shout out to, I don't know the name of them, but we were added via Twitter, Greg, into a Championships podcasts group by an AFC Wrexham podcast, and that's where that was kind of my first real. Oh yeah, we're definitely back in the Championship now, alongside Wrexham. That's weird. But obviously, we've now had confirmation that Liverpool have won the title, and all three teams that are going to be relegated have been confirmed as relegated. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, it is all three teams that came up. Not exactly in the order that they came up, but pretty close.
Yeah,
I feel like if Steve Cooper had stayed at Leicester, maybe it would have been the exact order. Who actually knows? But yeah, so what do you think? A lot of ex-Saints. Virgil van Dijk's there. Liverpool have won again. They've got to do it in front of their fans now.
Yeah,
That must be nice.
Yeah, look, it's nice. I watched the celebrations yesterday. I don't know if I share a view on Liverpool that's the same as the rest of our fan base. I think I've said before on the show, my wife's a Liverpool fan, so it was nice to watch. Yeah, I mean, good for them. Great. It's an interesting indictment on the rest of the Premier League, which is not to take away from their victory, because let's put it out there, they've been the most consistent and best team in the league and fully deserve their championship. It's not their fault that the rest of the league sucks, right?
Yeah, because
25 games,
points they've had.
Yeah, that's it. But you think back to previous years in the Premier League, and I can think off the top of my head of like 6 examples of things that we're not going to see happen this season because everything's wrapped up so early, right? So you don't get Man City beating Man United for the title with Aguero in the last minute of the Premier League, like creating that famous soundbite and that incredible moment. You don't get Saints surviving on the last day by the skin of their teeth with a Matt Letizia goal. Don't get any of that. We're going to have 2 screens going on. Is it going to be Liverpool winning the league or Man City because it's the last day of the season? You can't decide. It's just we've got 4 games left and no one cares.
Well, I think that's a bit of a disservice to the Champions League spots, right? But I agree with you in the sense of even two sort of 3 years ago. So like when we went down with Leeds, right? Do you remember at one point Leeds did bring in Big Sam? And they brought him in for like 2 or 3 games to see if they could get something out of the last couple of games and survive. And you're right, it's just wrapped. Like the bottom, there's nothing to play for, which means that theoretically the bottom clubs that have been relegated might go out and just get some wins. Still could see Vardy putting 3 past us on Saturday just because. I'm not going to predict that now. We're still early in the week, and I'm riled up, so maybe I'm up for a fight. But you're right.
I mean, they haven't scored a goal at home since Christmas, Zach. If that doesn't speak of a
no, they broke that. They broke that not too long ago. So maybe because they've broken it, they can't break it against us. Maybe you're right. They'll get nothing. But when you look at how many points it's taken for Liverpool to win the title and just the state of the league in general. Like you're looking at sort of Man United, Tottenham, both still have their managers somehow. I feel like it's entirely down to the Europa League for Ange at this point. But like, you're right. There is clearly something this year that feels a bit different, and I don't know if it's the golf. I don't know if it's what, because Liverpool have recruited well, but they haven't broken the bank. They've not done anything absolutely insane. They've covered a sort of few key positions, but their squad is relatively the same as it was beforehand. But yet they've managed to kind of get away with the league this year, kind of run away with it a little bit. And
But they brought in a manager, Zach, who didn't like change an entire system of play from something that was nearly there, and changed things up a bit tactically and played to their strengths. Where Liverpool are strong on the break, so let's sort of build around that. And isn't it amazing what happens when you don't come in with a hardcore philosophy on football and stick to your guns that well?
Yeah, but what does that say? What does that say about teams like Arsenal, where Arteta's spent like 2 to 3 to 4 years trying to build something? Is that just a case of he's not been backed in the transfer market to get the quote unquote striker that they need and bits and pieces like that? We've also seen the capitulation of Man City. That it's getting a little better, but like I don't know if you saw like the conversation around with Pep saying that like they cannot see this season as a success even if they win the FA Cup, which I think is slightly disrespectful. I think a lot of other teams, if they won the FA Cup, would just be happy to win the FA Cup. I understand there's a level of expectation and weight that comes behind sort of the league and the Champions League and all that kind of stuff that comes with it. But like, other than that, it's just felt like a very, very strange year. But the golf has also felt massive. And even the golf in those bigger teams, like, the bigger ones, like you'd expect Spurs to be fourth. And that's an ongoing joke. You'd expect Man United to be higher than they are. And that's not going to happen. And even if it got to sort of the last day for Man City to clinch it by beating Man United, I don't know how stressful or exciting it would be, because I feel like it would just probably end up as a 0-0 draw. And saying that, obviously, Man United definitely did produce an exciting game with their 5-4 win against Lyon. Me and you both watched that and went, have no idea what's happening here. They followed that up with not a lot else, but
that's because that's their focus. Like that's all they've got left. They're 13th, mate. Like 14th at the moment. Like that European Championship is their only route into the Champions League, and that's a ridiculous position for European football, where the team who are finishing for as low as potentially 16th, if the results play out, could still qualify for the Champions League next season.
It's been weird. Like, Chelsea doing really, really well at the beginning of the season, sort of massively dropping off. I'm sad to see Forest sort of drop down a little bit. Even Bournemouth were on a bit of a European charge, and that's kind of slowed down. It's just been a strange year. And yet somehow in between all of this, we just keep getting beaten by 3 to 4 goals by every team we come across. Apart from, Everton and Ipswich.
And Ipswich,
who, one of which, at the beginning of the season, there was a lot of talk about Everton going down. And, now they've got David Moyes. It's just, I understand that football's ever evolving and ever changing. And I know that we were talking about how each year can be as interesting as the last, but like this year certainly has been a strange one. And I don't really know what you can put it down to, if I'm totally honest. But let's talk about it some more after a word from our partners at Bioniq.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements, designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
We are back. So obviously we've talked a little bit about the sort of winning of the league. And we've talked a little bit about the sort of relegated parties.
We didn't talk about the funniest part of winning the league, though.
Oh, is this the flares?
Yeah, absolutely.
Greg, what happened with these flares, mate?
It's been all over the social. I'm surprised that you haven't seen more of it, to be honest. You spend more time on them than me. It was interesting that there were a number of blue flares set off amongst the Red Sea of Liverpool celebrations. And it is because it appears that one Everton fan took it upon themselves a month ago to buy as many as 10,000 blue flares and slowly delabel them, relabel them as red flares, and try and sell them to Liverpool fans. And that is... Look, we say a lot of things about this league, but that is a level of commitment to a petty joke that
It is.
I can get behind. I'm right there. That's hilarious.
It's somehow to me funnier than you've got these European ultras that are trying to kind of emulate sort of 80s Premier League sort of ultras and the sort of fights and taking your tops off but in actuality this is the modern day, right? And one of the reasons I did see it, Greg, I saw it a lot. I think that I just kind of, like I do with most things I see on social media, just thought, haha, that's a very funny joke. I didn't think that it was actually going to be, they were going to actually start setting off flares that were going to be blue. I guess I didn't believe his commitment to the bit. And that's when you realise man, football fans were kind of crazy when it comes to that kind of stuff and levels of rivalry. And it was. I guess that's.
But when it's something like that, which in the grand scheme of things, realistically, has not done anybody any harm, that is top level. That is so funny.
Now, Greg, you know, pyrotechnics are a serious business, and unless it helps make good photographs and papers, and then it's fine. But
I've seen some of the photos. I saw a photo taken from a plane of the red smoke around the Anfield area of the Liverpool celebrations. So
do you reckon they'll get their Photoshop people to Photoshop all of the blue smoke to red smoke from the blue flares?
No, I think that the amount of red smoke there was massively outdid the blue smoke, but it was still funny to see these spots of blue. And like I say, there was no harm done to anyone realistically. I think that's very funny.
Yeah,
it doesn't really take away from what are incredible scenes of celebration for their win, and rightly so. I mean, to win it in such an emphatic fashion as well, right? With so many games to spare and to
but again, it's
Spurs. I mean, what hope did they stand?
But again,
even Gary Neville turned around on commentary and Spurs are the perfect team for Liverpool to play, really, because
the Spurs. I'm getting
I think the words he used were there were no sense of fear, but what he really meant is
we're gonna get a reputation. I've already got a reputation for two things, right? Mugging off Preston. Was it Preston I always used to mug off?
Rotherham.
The fact I forgot... you're right. The fact that I forgot who I spent all my time mugging off was a good thing, because that means I must have stopped doing it. But you're right. Apologies to anyone listening in Rotherham. But yeah, I also now reckon I have this low-key reputation as someone that just hates Spurs. And I don't. I really like Spurs in small doses. It's the insufferability of anybody, I think, in the top 10 that thinks they're a top 3 club. And I guess you would expect a lot of the teams that have sort of sat around mid-table to come higher. And the fact that you've got United and Spurs both underneath 10th is mad. Absolutely mad. And that's what I was trying to say. When it comes to the bottom of the table, was it inevitable that all 3 of the Championship teams that came up crashed out? What is the big difference? Because, if we managed to get some of the managers that, the manager that Wolves have managed to get in, if we managed to get some of the players, but we keep talking about this golf. And it's not just the golf of, if a team comes up, they have the money, they should invest in players. You can buy 1 or 2 good players. Like Ipswich did it with Delap, right? We looked at Delap. They bought a striker in. The problem you've got is that it's building depth in a good way. You need seasons to build the level of depth that these good teams have.
It's a number of things, right? And actually, Steve on the Total Saints pod I was listening to earlier put it in a way that was really concise that I've not thought about before. And there's 3 main contributing factors to it, right? And that is obviously financial fair play. It's not as easy to spend money, but that's not the biggest one. The biggest one is the other 2. This is now the 2nd season in a row where the teams that have been relegated have all come up from the Championship. And what that means is that all of the teams above them have had 3 years of that building process. So that is why the gap dwindles. But actually, the third point that he also made was this change to 5 substitutions, where actually now, as well as that initial depth being a problem, you can change half a team.
You can.
And
I
that
agree with
only
that.
benefits these teams that have had those additional 3 years to build that depth. And how many times this season have we said that it's the quality coming off the bench that has done us in time and time again? And
This is the thing.
that is
So we
what it
need
is.
to have a team full of people that can play 90 minutes without needing to be subbed off. And the problem is that I know you talked about, and we all talk about fitness all the time, and we do understand that it's a big aspect. And it's coming from someone that I can run a 5K once a week in a treadmill environment. That's my level of fitness. And I understand that saying that about these players, but then also if you're working around other teams that don't have to do that, because they do have people that can just hop on, hop off, and they have that level of quality spread around. And one of my friends said it before, and I probably agree with him even more so now that we're back down again. Did we need more time in the Championship? Do you need more time to build up a good team? But you say, obviously, Ipswich, it's their first time up in a long time, but they've gone straight back down. So they've had time to build into the area they're in. They rightly were promoted.
They didn't, though, did they? They came, didn't they, weren't they back to back? They came straight up and went straight up.
I don't think so. That was the first time they've been back in years.
I'm pretty sure.
I might be going mad, but
it's either way, they've not had that Premier League building time, right? Because
but this is the problem. But I guess what my argument is that even if, like us, you go down, get the money, keep building, come back up into the Premier League, you've still got some Premier League quality players, and it's still a massive struggle. And then if you've got teams that are going to break through, so looking at the potentials of sort of Sunderland and looking at the potentials of Bristol City, they're going to come up. And unless you do what Forest did when they come up and break the financial fair play rules, you're going to massively struggle. And I almost think that we should have done that.
Ipswich did go back to back. They came up from League One and then went straight up to the Championship.
Sorry, when you were saying back to back, I thought you meant as in down from the Premiership and then up.
No,
again.
So they came up from League One and then went straight up from
exactly.
But they haven't had that building time to get to a Premier, because we've talked as well about the gap between the League One and the Championship. It's or not even that really, between that bottom half of the Championship and the top half of the Championship.
You were talking about you sent through an article. We were talking about it separately because, funny enough, is when we're not on the podcast, it is genuinely also one of the things that we only talk about. that and most recently it's been NFL draft week, so it's been a bit of American football too for the people that hate that. But there we are. But you're right. Like the difference is in just there's almost so many different tiers of level now. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Wrexham, because could you imagine Wrexham going up to the league? Because that's like football manager style stories, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Or do you think that's it? Do you think that they're stuck now in the Championship?
This is going to be, since the National League, which is notoriously hard to get out of. This is their toughest challenge yet, because it is such a substantial step up. And now you're in a position, it's a really difficult position for them as well, because what you've got is a team that you've built success on, and you've had these players that were too good for the National League because they were in League One, lower league Championship level. So now you have the tough decisions to make, right? You have do we have to cut some of these players who have been with us to get us this back to back promotions, who now are probably not going to be good enough?
Well, they've done that. They've done that with their, I can't remember the name of the guy, like the key guy, one of the key guys from the documentary, the one that appeared in the Deadpool movie. And then since he ended up going out, he had surgery on his back twice. And then obviously since then, they brought in Jay Rodriguez from Burnley. We know, obviously, Jay Rod.
Yeah.
And then he's taken his spot since then. But the problem is like, I think that the jump, you're right, up into the Championship is going to be
different though, right? He's going out for back surgery, and Mullin is an aging player anyway. It's not as ruthless as some of the decisions they're going to have to make. I don't know, they might do it, and they might do very well at it, and they've got the financial back in. And I think we were talking about it off the air about how obviously it's a lot said for like Newcastle, where they come in with the Saudi money, and Man City, where they've come in with these like big cash injections. And yes, it's undeniable that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have put a lot of money into Wrexham, but also what they've done is set up like this documentary structure that's sort of helped the club create their own success in such a weird way. It sort of
I would
makes them
say
a very polarizing club as well.
that they are, but I would also say I reckon that formula started with Sunderland, because Sunderland Till I Die was like the OG sort of behind the scenes football documentary, and I think it died when Wayne Rooney tried to do it with Plymouth. And then Plymouth were like, actually, this is having a massive effect on our ability to stay in the league. Can you not do this? And then a couple of weeks later, fired him. So,
but and I mean, there's been a few that sort of hit around the same time. There's been a couple of All or Nothing style documentary series.
Arsenal,
I remember the Arsenal one, and Spurs did one. Yeah, but none of them did it as consistently or as well. And none of all of those are different because they were separate entities. That they were documentary crews that came in and did this existing documentary on this team. Whereas Welcome to Wrexham, because of the world that their owners live in, was built with that brand in mind. It's an interesting one and it's fascinating, but I don't know. I think that it's going to be a shock to their system. I think that they're expecting for it to be difficult this year. I don't think any Wrexham fan will tell you that they're expecting to go up to the Premier League.
I don't know.
Championship has always been the aim, right? For the longest time.
I genuinely think that their ambition is that, but like some of the stuff I want to talk
their
about
ambition is, but it won't be next season.
Never know. Never say never, mate, to anything anymore. But I want to speak a little bit about, is it just down to money? But we'll do that after a word from our partners at Zencastr.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr.
We are back. Sorry, Greg. I'll pretty much start off where we stopped. Is it all down to money? Because looking at how good Forest are now, that part of that is the fact they massively overspent when they came up. Or for it not being all about money.
It's not all about money, because if it was all about how much money you pump in, we wouldn't be the worst team in Premier League history.
No, Chelsea would also at this point have about 4 separate teams that are all in top.
Just about money. Obviously, the more income and the more investment you have, the bigger your margin for error, your allowance, your gap that you can make mistakes for is. It's about making the right footballing decisions at the right time. And that's why Wrexham have been so much more successful at it than some of the others who have tried, because they came in with the money and the big investment and they went, this is a cool project that we can get behind, but also I know nothing about football. Let's bring in people who do know about football to make those football decisions. Because
no way. You mean hiring staff that know about football instead of just winging it is a good thing?
That's and that's like the direct opposite when you contrast to like Sports Republic, who came in for us, right? Who came in like, well, it's a stats-driven business and we know everything about stats. We're the stats specialists. Let's bring in statistically the best manager in Europe. It's Nathan Jones. And everyone's like, what? What are you talking about?
I can't even take it seriously, but you're right. That's probably...
That's 100% the difference, right?
There's got to be someone who sat in a room and went, Nathan Jones, manager of Southampton, I can just see it working.
He is statistically the best manager in Europe. Pound for pound.
Could have married a PE teacher. Right, anyway.
That's the difference, right? There is obviously the money is important, because the bigger the money investment, the more you can spend and the more wages you can pay to attract the better players. But that is not the only factor.
It's not the only factor, but it's like you look at a Newcastle, and if it wasn't for the fact they got bought out, would Newcastle still have Isak? Would Newcastle have the power that they've had to go on to win a trophy this year for the first time?
Of course they wouldn't.
Years.
No, of course they wouldn't. But that's not the only point. That's not the only factor that's contributed to their success.
It's not the only factor. You're right. It's a combination of things. But I do think that kind of stuff is important. And I guess we'll have to see
Of course
what
it
happens
is.
to us in the future.
If you can attract the better players if you can pay them more money to play for you. That's a very simple equation. But also, you can also attract, what's the polite way of putting this? People who can't play but want the big money.
I was just going to say gold diggers. Like that's where I'm at, right? Like people that just want a really big paycheck, and like that's the thing, right? A lot of them usually do just end up going off to the Saudi league.
Or George Weah's cousin, that sort of thing.
I was thinking more Mitrovic from Fulham, absolutely incredible player, would definitely score you goals, but someone's offered me like £20 billion to move to Saudi Arabia. Goodbye.
Well, I think that's different because, I don't think I can sit here and negatively cast an aspersion on that, because if I'm given that choice, I'm probably taking the £20 billion.
Man, you can talk about the philosophies around this kind of stuff for hours and days, and I'm sure you'd all love to listen to it, but or not. Wait for other spin-off, the daily random other football. Obviously, we'll be back in the next episode to talk about something a little bit Southampton. I've still got research to do on my next manager update, so that'll probably be with you at a later date. So the next episode will be something Southampton related, we promise you. And that'll be that. So, Greg, it was a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for talking about whatever this season has ended up being, and somehow probably significantly more Wrexham than anyone expected. But we are going to be playing them next season, so we joked about that at the beginning of the season.
That's an away day trip that my wife might even partake in. So
perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for listening. We are on all the social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, YouTube. I think that's all of them. All the ones that I can remember that I do on a daily basis. So until then, wonderful listeners, we will see you in the next one.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.